Alright, so just the other day, Francis Ngannou was called out by the PFL CEO, Donn Davis, for not showing up to their first African event back in July, and here's the kicker, he also did not make an appearance at their second event in Africa that just took place on Saturday. Mind you, not only is he the PFL Africa chairman, but one of his major demands for joining the PFL was that the company roll out this entire African initiative, so the fact that this guy has completely ghosted both of their events thus far is quite the slap in the face. And when you take into account that Ngannou is getting a guaranteed $10 million every single time that he steps into the PFL ring, I'm really getting the feeling that this dude Francis completed one of the greatest moments of fleecery in MMA history. I mean, especially seeing as he's only had one fight in the promotion so far, and with no future fights even being discussed, Ngannou's treated the PFL like a local thought and hit it and quit it. He told the PFL that he's a Cameroonian prince who needs help, and they believed him, and yeah, in this video I'm going to be talking about all this and more. So I'm not entirely sure why there's not an actual video of Davis giving this statement, but this is what he told ESPN regarding Francis ditching the first PFL Africa event last month. You have to ask Francis why he wasn't there. I'm not going to hide it, I expected him to be there. This is part of his vision so that all those fighters out there don't have to leave the continent like he did. We worked for 2 years, I'm disappointed. Davis made this statement on Thursday, which was 2 days before this Saturday's event, and call me crazy, but I feel like the only reason he would have said this to the press is if he knew, or at least probably knew, that Ngannou wasn't going to make an appearance at this most recent event. There's no way that Davis wasn't calling or messaging Ngannou in the weeks leading into PFL Africa 2, and maybe Francis gave him the heads up that he wouldn't be making it, but honestly, I get the feeling that Ngannou probably ghosted him. The fact that Davis said you have to ask Francis why he wasn't there indicates to me that he never got a clear response from him as to why he didn't show up to the first event, and just the general sense of frustration that he's putting out here leads me to believe that he fully expected Ngannou to no-show the second event as well. He is the leader of PFL Africa, and he hasn't shown up to any of the events they've hosted there. Mind you, I am a massive fan of Ngannou as a fighter and as a person, but still, when a fighter that I like isn't acting right, I gotta say something about it. When he signed to the PFL, he bragged about what a game-changing initiative this is going to be, not just for African MMA, but for the entire sport as well. And to be fair, I do think it is a pretty significant addition to the sport. The PFL is the first global MMA promotion to ever have an event in Africa, which is cool and all, but at the same time, I don't think it's all that crazy of a project. But of course, it's Francis, the dude's from Cameroon, he still spends a lot of time in Africa, so it makes sense why he wants to give shine to the MMA fighters over there. And I will say this, even if he himself isn't showing up to these events, it's still a good thing for the sport of MMA to have this new avenue for African fighters to make a name for themselves. That being said, he really should be showing up to these events. For all intents and purposes, these are his events. There literally wouldn't even be a PFL Africa division of the promotion if it weren't for him. He is the guy that contractually enforced the PFL to go through all of these hoops to make these African events a thing. The least he can do is actually show face and show up to watch the damn fights. Say what you will about the PFL, because Lord knows I've said a lot of bad things about them, but they really did bend over backwards to give him everything that he asked for. Guaranteed $10 million per fight, guaranteed $2 million for all of his opponents, equity in the company, chairman of PFL Africa, and a spot on the company's global advisory board. The PFL has been exceptionally accommodating, to the point where even at the time of signing, it felt like they were giving him way too much, by the way. Ngannou signed with the PFL in May of 2023, and fast forward 2.5 years to present day, what has he actually done for them? He's fought one time against Renan Fajeda in what was the PFL's biggest card ever, which still lost the company millions of dollars, and although he was obviously able to get PFL Africa off the ground, he's not even making appearances at the events. Like, dog, wasn't this your baby?
But it's also a good thing. It's also a proof of like achievement, of like success, thing that you have done in the right way. And I think if a man is able to like have that kind of influence that we have on people expecting stuff to us, I think it's also a blessing. So yes, it's a responsibility, but I proudly carry that responsibility.
I think that this might be a good time to ask, how much does it actually matter whether or not he shows up for the PFL Africa fights? Like, could it be enough that they're hosting events on African soil and his appearance at the events isn't as important as the events themselves? Because I totally agree that him not showing up to the events is at least better than the alternative of them never having an event to begin with and making empty promises that PFL Africa is on its way. But to quote the man himself, he says that he's happy to take up the responsibility that comes with his success. And by the way, this responsibility was not forced upon him. Francis wanted this, he asked for this, he demanded this. And although it's great that PFL Africa has become fully realized, I feel like it's also his responsibility to be there and show support for the fighters, the company, and the dream that he wanted to see built. From the outside looking in, it kind of just seems like a big slap in the face. If I was an African fighter that was on the card, I'm sure that I would want to see him sitting cage side, showing that he was proud of what he helped bring to life. If I was the PFL, I would absolutely absolutely want to see the chairman of PFL Africa present for obvious reasons. And as a fan of Francis, I also want to see him there putting his money where his mouth is and showing the world that he truly cared about this initiative. The fact that he's not there at all kind of makes me wonder how much actual work that he put into making all of this happen. Sure, he's the chairman of that division of the company, and I'm sure he's making some decisions, but if my 8 years of working in the corporate world has taught me anything, sometimes the guy leading the team does the least amount of work. I don't doubt that people are sending him emails asking for approvals on things like dates and locations, but I really do wonder how much actual work he's doing as chairman. Let me put it this way, the least that he can do with the position that he has is to show up to the fights, and seeing as he's not even doing that, it really makes me wonder what he is or isn't doing behind the scenes. All that aside, here's my biggest issue with all of this. It's the hypocrisy. When Ngannou left the UFC, he cited that the biggest reason for leaving wasn't the money, it was the lack of respect that he felt from Dana.
The only thing that I'm scared of is to be trapped. It's not to lose my freedom, which I value very much. You guys know how the UFC contract can be restrictive, and as an independent contractor, you don't really have a say in that contract. You don't even have a right. So I can do that. Maybe explore a possibility to do one boxing match and come back into MMA with another organization, promotion, or my own promotion. Everywhere that I feel respected, everywhere that I feel value, I'll be happy to do that.
And now that he's a boss at PFL, he's not showing his own events and fighters the respect of even being there. I'm not going to compare between Dana and Francis, who's acting more disrespectfully, but disrespect is disrespect. We all know the type of guy that Dana is, but Francis also isn't doing right by his fighters, or the PFL for that matter, by pulling this sort of bullshit. Okay, I gotta move on to the next part of this video, which is Francis has absolutely fleeced the PFL. There is no way that Donn Davis can be happy with the value that Ngannou's provided to the company. The promotion was already hemorrhaging money before they signed him, and I can only imagine that with the addition of PFL Africa, as well as his equity stake in the company, they have lost way more money than they've gained by acquiring him. And with the rumors that he's going to be fighting Deontay Wilder in a boxing match, if I was Donn Davis, I would be fucking pissed at the runaround he's been doing. Ngannou is committing daylight robbery on the PFL, and it doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon. It would be one thing if he was at least doing the bare minimum for the company, but I wouldn't even say that's been the case so far. Sure, the PFL signed him on as a fighter, but with all the extra stipulations and benefits that they've given him, I think the more accurate term is that they signed him on as a business partner who they expected to go the extra mile in bringing the company to the forefront of MMA. Now, I will ask you this. In the time that Francis has been with the PFL, do you think that he's helped elevate the promotion to being more competitive with the UFC? Do you think that he's brought new eyes to the company with his one fight in 2.5 years? Keep in mind, he is still collecting a check even without fighting due to his 2 corporate positions at the PFL, so they're paying him even when he's not providing his most valuable asset, which are his fights. Think of all the money and manpower invested into making PFL Africa happen. Think of all the backdoor strings that had to be pulled in order to get Francis equity and leadership roles at the company. Obviously, this was a huge play out of Ngannou that's led to him being very rich, especially when you consider he was allowed to take 2 high-profile boxing matches while being contracted with the PFL. But in the spirit of responsibility, I feel like he has done the PFL dirty with how disconnected he seems to be. This was a monumental signing that might end up being a significant contributor as to why the PFL will inevitably go under, and at least from my own perspective, he doesn't seem to be holding up his end of the bargain. He's not fighting, he's not appearing at his events, and he's still collecting a paycheck twice a month for essentially doing nothing. And on that note, was Dana right about Francis all along?
The only one who's praying for his demise is probably the PFL, because they signed a shitty contract with a guy that doesn't deliver any numbers in ticket sales or pay-per-views. So, and they got to keep paying this guy for however long, and good for him, and not good for them. Francis was like, I was all about Francis in the beginning, and then I found out who Francis was. And I told the 2 guys who asked me not to cut Francis, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. I didn't like Francis as a person. Wasn't a guy I wanted to do business with. My boys were telling me he's misunderstood. And I told them, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Francis isn't a good guy. He plays the good guy. I don't understand the language. And, so he seems like he's a nice guy. He's not. And he's just not a guy that I wanted to be in business with.
Like, I really don't want to believe that this soft-spoken, seemingly humble fighter with an insane origin story can be a snake, but the way that he's been acting with the PFL seems pretty snaky, not gonna lie. He demanded the sun and the stars from Donn Davis, and in return, Ngannou grabbed Davis by the face, put it towards his butt cheeks, and farted in it. Given Davis is a bit of a weirdo, so he probably liked it, but you get what I'm saying. Francis seems like such a nice guy, but as the old saying goes, actions speak louder than words. Because for everything that the PFL accommodated to him, you would think that he'd do a little bit more to help them out, but I guess not. And to be fair, I'm saying that Francis is screwing over the PFL, not the fighters themselves. themselves. If PFL Africa continues to go on, then that does help out a lot of fighters in that area, and Renan Ferreira got the biggest payday of his entire life because of what Francis demanded in his contract. Those are undeniably good things, but if Ngannou continues to be a financial black hole for the company, then those good things might not be around for a while. You can call it savvy business, you can call it Francis looking out for number one, and both those things could be true. But what's also true is that Ngannou's ignoring the responsibilities that he asked for, and as much as I don't want to, it really makes me question how good of a person he really is at his core. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know your thoughts on Francis Ngannou. Should he be making appearances at PFL Africa, and do you think he even fights in the PFL ever again? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
And that's where Francis is basically at if he's going to continue to fight. I'm being honest when I look at it, and I look at Donn Davis, and I go, I understand why you feel the way you feel. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but this should be the start of you realizing that, you know what, the heavyweights are it's a glamour division with no talent. Let's just be honest. Okay? Why do you have it? You have the ability to put in a flyweight division. You finally put in the bantamweights. Way to go. That was a smart thing. You've got some really good talented people in that. Open up the 125-pound division. Take the heavyweights, get rid of it. The UFC's, look at be honest, their whole lineup. It's just not that good.